Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us at Soothing Sleep Tales. I'm Cora, and I'm delighted to spend another peaceful night with you. Tonight, we will guide you into a peaceful slumber with the story of Elara, who embarks on a journey in search of the truth about her mother who disappeared into the sea when she was young, accompanied by soothing music. Leave behind the fatigue of the day and enjoy this quiet moment. You'll feel your tension melt away as you gradually drift into a restful sleep. You've worked hard today. Now, lie down in a comfortable position and let your body and mind slowly recover. May you have a restful night filled with beautiful dreams. The Whispering Shores, an Odyssey of Tranquility. Chapter 1: The Call of the Ocean. In the quiet stillness of dusk, when the sky gently draped itself in shades of lavender and gold, a solitary figure stood upon the edge of a cliff overlooking the endless expanse of the sea. Her name was Elara, a woman whose heart had long been drawn to the mysteries of the horizon, yet whose feet had never wandered far from the village she called home. Tonight, however, something was different. A soft breeze, cooler than usual for a summer evening, carried with it the scent of salt and the faintest whisper of a song, one she had never heard before but felt she had always known. Elara inhaled deeply, her chest rising with the breath of the ocean, and for a moment, she closed her eyes. The song on the wind seemed to deepen, becoming clearer, more insistent. It was as if the sea itself was calling her, urging her to listen, to follow. She opened her eyes, now fixed on the distant horizon where the last light of the sun melted into the waves. The vastness of the ocean had always fascinated her, yet there was a part of her that feared it, a fear born not of the water, but of the unknown it represented. Her days in the village were filled with simplicity and routine. She helped her father tend to the small and they owned, greeting weary travelers, cooking meals, and keeping the fire burning through the long nights. It was a quiet life, and while she loved her father and the village that had nurtured her since childhood, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the world than what she knew. More than the well-worn paths that led from the village to the market square, more than the familiar faces she saw day after day. And now, the ocean itself seemed to be confirming this hidden truth. The sun sank further, leaving only a deep crimson streak across the horizon, and the first stars began to emerge, twinkling like distant lighthouses in the vast sky. As Elara stood there, her hand instinctively reached for the small pendant that hung around her neck. It was the only memento she had of her mother, who had disappeared when Elara was just a child. The pendant, shaped like a tiny shell, had always held a certain mystery. Her father said little of her mother's disappearance, only that she had gone to the sea and never returned. The village was filled with stories, of course, old legends about the sea spirits who could lure sailors and wanderers alike to their depths. Some said these spirits were kind, offering safe passage and treasure to those they favored. Others whispered darker tales of those who were never seen again, their souls taken by the endless waves. Elara had always dismissed these tales as old fishermen's fancies, the product of too many nights at the tavern and too much ale. But tonight, standing on that cliff with the wind brushing against her skin, she couldn't help but wonder if there was some truth to the stories. A soft rustling behind her broke the silence. Elara turned to see her father approaching, his steps slow and careful on the rocky path. His face, lined with years of hard work and the weight of unspoken grief, softened as he reached her side. "Still watching the sea, my girl?" he asked, his voice low and warm. Elara nodded, her gaze returning to the horizon. "It feels different tonight. I don't know how to explain it." Her father followed her gaze, his expression unreadable. "The sea always feels different when you're looking for something," he said after a pause. "But it never tells you what it knows. You have to find that for yourself." Elara turned to him, her brow furrowing slightly. "Do you ever think about her?" He didn't need to ask who she meant. For a moment, he said nothing, his eyes fixed on the distant waves. Then, he sighed softly. "Every day," he admitted. "But thinking won't bring her back. And neither will staring at the sea." She bit her lip, the familiar frustration rising in her chest. She had asked him so many times, in so many ways, about what had happened, but he never gave her more than vague answers. Whether he was protecting her from the truth or simply didn't know, she couldn't tell. "Maybe she's still out there," Elara whispered, more to herself than to him. "Maybe she's waiting." Her father shook his head, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Some things are better left in the past, Elara. The sea takes what it takes. And what it gives, well, it's not always what you expect." With that, he turned and began the slow walk back toward the village. Elara watched him for a moment before returning her gaze to the ocean. The wind had stilled, but the strange song lingered, faint but unmistakable. It tugged at something deep inside her, a feeling she couldn't ignore any longer. She took one last look at the village, the small, flickering lights of the inn barely visible through the trees. Her father's words echoed in her mind, but they did nothing to quell the yearning that had grown stronger with each passing day. Without fully realizing what she was doing, Elara stepped toward the narrow path that wound down the cliffside, leading to the beach below. She would walk to the shore, just to see, just to listen a little closer to that distant melody. As she descended, the air grew cooler, and the sounds of the village faded until all that remained was the rhythmic crash of the waves against the rocks. The song was clearer now, weaving itself into the wind, and with each step, Elara felt herself drawn deeper into its embrace. The beach was deserted, the sand soft beneath her feet as she walked toward the water's edge. For a long moment, She simply stood there, her toes barely grazing the cool water, the vastness of the sea stretching out before her. She felt small, insignificant in the face of such endlessness, yet at the same time, she felt connected. As though the ocean knew her, knew what she sought. And then, just as she was about to turn back, something caught her eye. Far off in the distance, a faint glow appeared on the horizon, a soft, golden light, unlike anything she had ever seen before. It pulsed gently, beckoning her, as if the ocean itself was revealing a secret, just for her. Elara's breath caught in her throat. The glow grew brighter, more distinct, and she knew, in that moment, that her life was about to change forever. Chapter 2: The Glimmer Beyond the Waves. Elara stood motionless at the shoreline, her heart racing as the soft, golden glow in the distance pulsed with an unspoken promise. The wind had stilled, the waves gentle as they lapped against the beach, as if the sea itself was waiting for her. She took a deep breath, her fingers curling around the pendant at her neck. There was no doubt now, something was calling her. The glowing light hovered just beyond the horizon, far from the reach of any boat she had ever seen, and yet it beckoned as though it were right within her grasp. For a moment, she hesitated. She could still turn back, return to the safety of her village and the comfort of the life she had always known. But deep down, she understood there was no going back, not anymore. The pull of the sea was undeniable, stronger than it had ever been. It was no longer just curiosity that tugged at her, it was something deeper, a feeling that resonated in the very core of her being. She took a step forward, the cool water swirling around her ankles, and with each step, her resolve hardened. The song in the air, barely more than a whisper now, seemed to guide her as she waded deeper into the ocean. The waves rose gently around her knees, the water cool but not cold, as though it welcomed her. She felt a strange sense of calm wash over her, even as the golden light in the distance grew brighter, more defined. It was as if the sea itself was cradling her, urging her onward. Suddenly, something brushed against her foot beneath the surface. Elara froze, her breath catching in her throat. She looked down, expecting to see the familiar sand of the shore, but instead, her eyes were drawn to a glimmering object just beneath the surface, a shell, larger than any she had ever seen, glistening with an iridescent sheen. She knelt down in the water, reaching out to touch the shell. It was smooth, cool to the touch, and as her fingers brushed against it, a soft vibration hummed through her fingertips. Startled, she pulled back slightly, but the shell seemed to pulse in response, glowing faintly beneath the water. Without thinking, she lifted it from the seabed, cradling it in her hands. The shell was surprisingly light, and as she held it, the glow from the horizon flickered as if in recognition. For a brief moment, the world around her seemed to still, the waves, the wind, even the distant cry of the seabirds overhead. Everything quieted. Then, without warning, the shell began to vibrate more strongly, its soft glow intensifying. Elara's heart pounded in her chest as the light within the shell expanded, casting a warm, golden hue over the water around her. She gasped as the glow enveloped her completely, filling her with a sense of warmth and peace, unlike anything she had ever felt before. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, the glow faded, leaving Elara standing in the shallow water, the shell still cradled in her hands. But something had changed. The air felt charged, alive with energy, and the light on the horizon was no longer a distant point, it had drawn closer, much closer. Elara's pulse quickened as she realized the glow was now only a short distance from where she stood. The waves parted slightly, revealing a path of shimmering water that led directly toward the source of the light. She could see it clearly now, a small boat, its edges lined with golden light, drifting silently toward her. The boat was unlike anything she had ever seen. It was small, but elegant, crafted from a material that seemed to shimmer and change with the light. The golden glow emanated from the boat itself, casting soft ripples across the water as it drew nearer. It was as though the ocean had formed this vessel just for her, born from the very waves she now stood in. As the boat approached, it slowed to a stop just a few feet away, gently bobbing on the surface. For a long moment, Elara stood frozen, staring at the small, glowing craft. It was beautiful, otherworldly, and she felt an overwhelming urge to step inside. Hesitantly, she took another step forward, the water now reaching her thighs. The boat remained still, waiting. Elara glanced back toward the shore, the faint lights of her village barely visible in the distance. It seemed so far away now, so small compared to the vastness of the sea and the possibilities that lay before her. She looked back at the boat, her heart pounding in her chest. There was no denying it now, this was her journey to take. Whatever lay ahead, it was her path to follow. With one final, deep breath, she reached out, her fingers brushing the side of the boat. The golden light pulsed gently, as if welcoming her. Without another word, she pulled herself into the boat, settling onto the smooth, glowing surface. The boat rocked slightly under her weight, but as soon as she was seated, it steadied, the gentle glow intensifying around her. And then, as if guided by an invisible hand, the boat began to move, gliding silently across the water. Elara watched in awe as the shore grew smaller behind her, the village fading into the distance. The boat cut through the waves with ease, heading directly toward the open sea. As she sailed further from the shore, the wind picked up slightly, rustling her hair and filling the air with the scent of salt and something else, something sweet and unfamiliar. Elara closed her eyes for a moment, allowing the breeze to wash over her, carrying away the last remnants of doubt and fear. When she opened her eyes again, the horizon had shifted. The sky above was now a deep indigo, scattered with stars so bright they seemed almost within reach. The boat continued its smooth course, carrying her toward a destination she couldn't yet see but felt she was meant to find. The sea stretched out endlessly before her, a vast expanse of shimmering black and silver. For the first time in her life, Elara felt truly at peace, free from the constraints of her village, her past, and the unanswered questions that had always haunted her. Here, on the open water, there were no limits, no boundaries. Only the quiet rhythm of the waves and the endless possibilities that lay beyond. As the boat glided onward, the soft song that had first called her to the sea returned, this time clearer and more melodic. It filled the air around her, its notes intertwining with the gentle sound of the ocean, creating a lullaby that seemed to soothe her very soul. Elara's eyelids grew heavy as the song lulled her into a state of deep relaxation. She leaned back slightly, letting her body sink into the soft glow of the boat. The gentle rocking of the waves, the cool breeze against her skin, and the distant hum of the ocean all conspired to ease her into a calm, dreamlike state. Just as sleep began to overtake her, a faint flicker of movement caught her eye. She blinked slowly, fighting the drowsiness that threatened to pull her under. Through half-lidded eyes, she saw someone, standing at the bow of the boat. It was a figure, shrouded in mist, their form barely visible against the starlit sky. Elara's heart skipped a beat, but the fear that should have gripped her was strangely absent. Instead, a sense of familiarity washed over her, as though she had always known this figure, even if she had never seen them before. The figure stood still, their gaze fixed on the horizon. They did not speak, but Elara could feel their presence, strong and calming. And as the boat continued its steady course into the night, the figure remained, a silent guardian on her journey into the unknown. Elara's eyes fluttered shut, the soft song of the sea carrying her into a peaceful, dreamless sleep. Chapter 3: The Guardian of the Mist. When Elara awoke, it was as though no time had passed at all, yet everything felt different. The soft light of dawn was creeping over the horizon, casting a gentle, pinkish hue over the endless expanse of water. The boat moved steadily, gliding over the calm surface of the sea, but the figure at the bow remained where it had been, a silent sentinel, watching the horizon. Elara blinked the last remnants of sleep from her eyes, her heart steady, though her curiosity was rising like the morning sun. The figure before her was tall, their forms still cloaked in the soft mist that seemed to hover just above the water. For a moment, Elara hesitated, unsure whether to speak or stay silent, but something about the figure felt oddly familiar, as though they had been with her all along. The mist swirled lazily around the figure, parting only slightly as they turned toward her. The movement was slow, deliberate, and when their face came into view, Elara's breath caught in her throat. It was not a stranger, nor a mere shadow. It was a woman, her features graceful and serene, her eyes like the depths of the ocean. Her hair flowed in soft waves, as dark as midnight, and her skin shimmered with a faint, silvery light, as if kissed by the moon itself. For a long moment, the two women simply stared at each other. Elara could feel the warmth of the figure's gaze, yet it was more than just a look. It was as though the woman could see into the very core of her being, into her thoughts, her fears, her dreams. Finally, the woman spoke, her voice soft but carrying the weight of the sea. "You've heard the call, haven't you, Elara?" The sound of her own name on the woman's lips sent a shiver down Elara's spine. She nodded, still unable to find her voice. The woman smiled gently, her eyes shimmering like the waves beneath the boat. "I've been watching over you for a long time. You've always been destined for this journey." Elara's heart raced at the woman's words. Who are you?" she asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. The woman stepped forward, her movements as fluid as the water that surrounded them. She reached out and touched the pendant that hung around Elara's neck, the small shell her mother had left behind. "I am a guardian of the seas," she said, her fingers gently brushing the pendant. "And I know the truth you seek." Elara's pulse quickened. "You know what happened to my mother, don't you?" The woman's eyes softened, and she withdrew her hand, her gaze drifting out to the horizon. "Your mother, she was one of us. A guardian, like me." Elara's breath caught in her throat. The words felt surreal, impossible even, yet deep inside her, something clicked into place. She had always felt that her mother's disappearance was more than a tragic accident, more than the village's simple explanations. But a guardian, like the woman standing before her now. Her mother had never spoken of the sea spirits, never mentioned any connection to this mysterious world. The woman seemed to sense Elara's swirling thoughts. "Your mother came from the sea, Elara. She belonged to these waters, just as you do. But when she met your father, she chose to leave this life behind, to live on land and raise you. She loved you deeply." Elara's mind reeled. But why did she leave? Why did she go back? The guardian's expression darkened slightly, the mist around her thickening as though in response to her emotions. "There are forces within the ocean, Elara, forces that even we guardians cannot fully control. Your mother was called back to the sea, not by choice, but by necessity." Elara felt a knot tighten in her chest. Is she still alive? The guardian's gaze softened, and for a moment, there was silence, broken only by the gentle lapping of the waves against the boat. "She lives in a way," the guardian said finally. "But not in the form you remember." Elara's heart sank. The cryptic answer left her with more questions than before, but she could see that the woman was holding something back, something painful. "What do you mean?" she pressed gently. The guardian stepped closer, kneeling before Elara so that their faces were level. "Your mother was taken by the ocean's depths," she said, her voice low and steady. "There is a place far from here, a place deep beneath the waves, where the ocean's most ancient powers reside. Your mother was drawn there, bound to protect something precious, something powerful." Elara's hands tightened around the pendant. "What is this place?" The woman's eyes darkened. "It is called the Abyssal Sanctum. It is a realm hidden deep within the ocean, guarded by those of us who are chosen to protect its secrets. Your mother is now one of its keepers. But reaching it is no simple task, and the journey is perilous." Elara's mind raced with the enormity of the revelation. The Abyssal Sanctum. A place of ancient power, guarded by her mother. "Can I see her?" she asked, her voice trembling with a mixture of hope and fear. The guardian's gaze softened again, but there was a sadness in her eyes. "You may find her, yes. But the path to the sanctum is fraught with danger. The sea does not give up its secrets easily, and those who seek its depths must prove their worth." Elara swallowed hard, her resolve hardening. "I have to try. I need to understand." The guardian smiled faintly, as though she had expected this response. "I knew you would say that. The blood of the sea runs strong in you, Elara. But you must be prepared. The journey ahead will test you in ways you cannot yet imagine. The ocean is beautiful, but it is also wild and untamed. There are forces within it that seek to claim what they do not understand." Elara nodded, though her heart pounded with both excitement and trepidation. She had always known there was something more waiting for her beyond the shore, but she had never imagined anything like this. The pull of the sea, the mysterious glow, her mother's fate, it all felt connected, like threads of a tapestry slowly being woven together. "How do I find the sanctum?" she asked, her voice steady despite the uncertainty that swirled within her. The guardian rose to her feet, her form graceful and ethereal. She extended her hand, and from the mist that clung to the boat, a small, silver object appeared. It was a compass, but unlike any Elara had ever seen. The needle within it didn't point north. Instead, it spun slowly, guided by something unseen. "This will lead you," the guardian said, handing the compass to Elara. "But the path is not straightforward. The compass will guide you to places of significance, places where the sea's power is strongest. Only by following these paths will you find the entrance to the Abyssal Sanctum." Elara took the compass, her fingers trembling slightly as she held it. The needle twirled lazily, as though waiting for her to begin the journey. "And what of the dangers?" she asked quietly. What should I expect? The guardian's expression turned somber. The sea is vast and filled with creatures both wondrous and fearsome. Some will help you, others will seek to hinder you. There are spirits who resent the presence of humans, and there are those who guard the sanctum with their lives. You must tread carefully. Elara nodded, her resolve hardening with every word. She had come this far, and now that the truth was so close, she couldn't turn back. She would find her mother, no matter the cost. I'm ready, she said firmly, her voice filled with determination. The guardian smiled, though there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. Then your journey begins, Elara. But remember this, the sea is not just a place, it is alive, it has a will of its own. Listen to it, respect it, and you may find what you seek. With that, the guardian stepped back, the mist around her swirling once more. Her form began to fade, blending into the fog that surrounded the boat. I will be watching over you, she said softly, her voice fading as she disappeared into the mist. Trust in yourself, and in the power that lies within you. Elara sat in silence for a long moment, clutching the compass tightly in her hand. The ocean stretched out before her, vast and endless, but now, for the first time, she had a direction, a purpose. The journey ahead would be perilous, but she was no longer afraid. With the guardian's words echoing in her mind, Elara looked down at the compass. The needle had stopped spinning, now pointing steadily toward the open sea. She took a deep breath, her heart steady with resolve. The boat began to move once more, gliding silently over the water, carrying her toward the unknown depths of the ocean. Toward the Abyssal Sanctum, and the mother she had lost so long ago. Chapter 4: The Path of Tides. The boat moved steadily forward, gliding over the shimmering surface of the sea as though propelled by an unseen force. Elara sat at the helm, her hands gripping the silver compass that the guardian had given her. The needle pointed unerringly ahead, guiding her deeper into the vast unknown. The weight of her newfound mission sat heavily in her chest, but it was accompanied by a sense of purpose she had never felt before. She was no longer drifting aimlessly through life. She had a destination, the Abyssal Sanctum, where the fate of her mother lay shrouded in mystery. The sun rose higher in the sky, casting a soft, golden light across the ocean. The breeze was gentle, the waves calm, and for a time, Elara allowed herself to relax into the rhythm of the boat's movement. The morning air smelled fresh and clean, mingling with the ever-present scent of salt water, and she felt a fleeting sense of peace. As the hours passed, the scenery remained largely unchanged, endless water stretching out in every direction, the horizon a distant blur. There were no land masses in sight, no birds or sea creatures to break the monotony. The isolation was profound, but Elara didn't mind. It gave her time to think, to process everything she had learned. Her mother had been a guardian of the seas, a protector of an ancient realm that lay deep beneath the ocean's surface. The Abyssal Sanctum, the place she now sought, was a mysterious, hidden domain, guarded by forces Elara couldn't yet comprehend. And somehow, her mother had been called back to that place, leaving behind the life she had built on land. Elara had always suspected there was more to her mother's disappearance than anyone in the village had been willing to admit, but the truth was far more incredible, and far more heartbreaking, than she could have imagined. She gazed down at the silver compass in her hand, its needle still pointing straight ahead. The boat seemed to respond to the compass's direction, adjusting its course without Elara needing to steer. It was as if the sea itself was guiding her, drawing her ever closer to the next step in her journey. But what would she find when she arrived at the sanctum? Would her mother be there, waiting for her? Or had she been lost to the depths forever? The questions swirled in her mind, but no answers came. Instead, the sea remained silent, its vast expanse offering no clues, no hints of what lay ahead. The silence was eerie, but also soothing in a strange way, as though the ocean was giving her space to prepare for what was to come. Suddenly, the water beneath the boat began to shift, the gentle waves growing larger, more erratic. Elara felt the change immediately, the boat rocking slightly as it navigated the new currents. She looked out at the horizon, her eyes narrowing as she noticed something strange, a faint shimmer in the distance, almost like a ripple in the air. It was difficult to make out, but the longer she stared, the more defined it became. The shimmer seemed to stretch across the water like a transparent veil, undulating with the rhythm of the waves. Elara's heart quickened. Was this some kind of barrier? A gateway? The compass in her hand vibrated softly, its needle pointing directly toward the strange phenomenon. Without hesitation, Elara leaned forward, watching intently as the boat drew closer to the shimmering veil. As they neared it, the air around her seemed to change, growing heavier, denser, as if the very fabric of reality was shifting. The light of the sun dimmed slightly, casting a pale glow over the water. The veil rippled again, shimmering more brightly now, and Elara felt a strange pull deep within her, as though something beyond the veil was calling to her. Her pulse raced, and she instinctively tightened her grip on the boat's edge. The boat glided smoothly toward the veil, unbothered by the increasing turbulence of the water. Then, with a sudden rush of wind, the boat crossed through the shimmering barrier. Elara gasped as the world around her shifted dramatically. The air was thick with a faint mist that hung just above the water's surface, and the sea itself had changed, its once calm waves now swirling with powerful undercurrents. The sky above was darker, tinged with hues of deep blue and violet, and there was an almost palpable energy in the air, like the atmosphere just before a storm. But what struck her most was the presence that seemed to hang in the air, an ancient, unseen force that filled the space around her. It was both awe-inspiring and unnerving, as though she had stepped into a place where the boundaries between the physical and the spiritual had blurred. The boat continued to move forward, and Elara realized with a start that the compass in her hand was glowing faintly. The needle still pointed ahead, unwavering, guiding her deeper into this strange, otherworldly realm. For a time, the only sound was the rhythmic lapping of the waves against the hull of the boat. The mist swirled lazily around her, occasionally parting to reveal glimpses of strange shapes beneath the water, dark silhouettes that moved too quickly for her to identify. She caught glimpses of shimmering fins, the flash of scales, but each time she tried to focus, the shapes would vanish into the depths. Elara's heart pounded in her chest, her senses on high alert. She had entered a realm of the unknown, a place where the normal rules of the world no longer seemed to apply. But despite the eerie atmosphere, she felt no fear, only a deep, inexplicable sense of connection to the sea around her. Then, from the mist ahead, a sound emerged, a soft, melodic hum that grew louder as the boat moved forward. It was a hauntingly beautiful sound, like a chorus of voices singing in harmony, their tones weaving together to form a lullaby that seemed to resonate with the very essence of the sea. Elara's breath caught in her throat as the melody filled her ears, stirring something deep within her soul. She leaned forward, straining to see through the thick mist. And then, through the swirling fog, she saw it, an island rising from the water, its shores bathed in an otherworldly light. The island was small, almost too small to be real, but it glowed with a soft, inviting warmth, as though it were a beacon amidst the vastness of the ocean. The boat slowed as it approached the island, the compass's needle finally coming to rest. Elara's heart raced with anticipation as the boat gently nudged the sandy shore. She stood, her legs unsteady from the long hours at sea, and stepped onto the island's soft sand. The air was different here, lighter, fresher, and the melodic hum that had guided her grew louder, more distinct. Elara looked around, her eyes wide with wonder. The island was unlike anything she had ever seen. It was small, just a narrow strip of sand surrounded by a ring of shimmering water, but it felt alive with energy. The sand beneath her feet sparkled in the pale light, and the air was filled with the scent of sea breeze and something else, something floral and sweet. At the center of the island stood a single tree, tall and slender, its branches swaying gently in the breeze. The tree's bark was a deep silver, its leaves a rich emerald green that seemed to shimmer in the soft light. And nestled within its branches was the source of the hum, a cluster of glowing, iridescent shells that hung like ornaments, their soft light pulsing in time with the music. Elara's breath caught in her throat. She stepped forward, drawn to the tree and the strange, beautiful shells that adorned it. As she approached, the melody grew louder, filling her ears with its soothing tones. It was as if the tree was singing to her, calling to her with the same song that had drawn her to the sea in the first place. Without thinking, Elara reached out and touched one of the glowing shells. The moment her fingers brushed its surface, the hum intensified, and a wave of warmth surged through her body. Her mind filled with images, flashes of her mother's face, of the village she had left behind, of the ocean stretching out before her. And then, as quickly as it had begun, the visions faded, and Elara found herself standing on the island once more, her hand resting gently on the shell. She blinked, her heart still racing from the intensity of the experience. The tree's hum softened, and the shell's glow dimmed slightly, as if they had shared all they could with her for the moment. Elara stepped back, her mind swirling with questions. What had she just witnessed? What did the tree's song mean? Before she could dwell on it further, the mist around the island began to thicken, swirling more aggressively than before. Elara's heart raced, and she quickly turned to the boat, but it was still anchored firmly on the shore, waiting for her. She took a deep breath, knowing that the island had given her a gift, though its meaning was still unclear. Whatever lay ahead, she had been shown a glimpse of it, a vision of the path she was destined to follow. With one last glance at the glowing tree, Elara stepped back onto the boat. The mist closed in around her as the boat began to drift once more, guided by the silent pull of the sea. But now, she had a new sense of purpose, a deeper connection to the forces that guided her, and to the truth that awaited her in the depths of the ocean. Chapter 5: Beneath the Waves. The mist clung to the boat as it glided further from the island, the haunting melody of the tree's song still echoing in Elara's mind. The vision it had given her, the flashes of her mother, the images of the ocean, and the strange energy that pulsed through her body, left her both shaken and resolute. There was no turning back now. She was closer to the truth than ever before, and the pull of the Abyssal Sanctum grew stronger with each passing moment. The compass in her hand glowed faintly, the needle pointing steadily ahead. Elara's heart beat in rhythm with the gentle rocking of the boat, but beneath that calm exterior, she could feel the sea's energy shifting. The water had grown darker, deeper, and the gentle waves had given way to something more powerful, something ancient. The air was thick with a tension she couldn't quite place, and the sky above had taken on an unsettling hue, the clouds swirling in muted shades of purple and gray. As the boat carried her further into the unknown, Elara couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She scanned the horizon, her eyes straining to pierce the mist, but there was nothing, only the endless expanse of the sea. Still, the sensation persisted, gnawing at the edges of her consciousness. The sea had always felt alive to her, but now it seemed more like a presence, something vast and aware, something that was observing her every move. Suddenly, The compass vibrated in her hand, the needle quivering as it shifted direction slightly. Elara's heart leapt into her throat. The boat turned smoothly, following the new course without hesitation. The change in direction felt significant, as though the sea itself was guiding her toward something. But what? Minutes stretched into hours, and the tension in the air thickened. The waves beneath the boat grew more turbulent, their once rhythmic lapping now unpredictable and wild. The mist swirled with increasing intensity, and Elara felt the temperature drop, a chill settling over her that made her shiver despite the thick cloak she wore. And then, out of the corner of her eye, she saw movement beneath the surface. Elara froze, her grip tightening on the edge of the boat. At first, it was just a flicker, something dark and swift moving just below the water. She leaned over the side of the boat, her eyes scanning the depths. The water had taken on an almost inky blackness, and for a moment, she saw nothing but the reflection of the stormy sky above. Then it appeared again, a dark shape, larger this time, gliding just beneath the surface. Her pulse quickened. Whatever it was massive. She held her breath as the shape passed directly beneath the boat, moving with eerie grace. It was too deep for her to make out its form clearly, but the sheer size of it sent a shiver down her spine. The boat rocked gently in its wake, but the creature didn't seem to be threatening, at least, not yet. Elara straightened, her heart pounding in her chest. The sea had always been home to mysterious creatures, but she had never seen anything like this. Was it a guardian of the Abyssal Sanctum? A creature sent to test her resolve? Or something far more dangerous? Before she could contemplate further, the mist parted ahead of her, revealing a sight that took her breath away. A massive structure rose from the depths, its towering spires piercing the surface of the water like ancient ruins. The stone was dark, almost black, and covered in thick layers of coral and seaweed. The structure seemed impossibly old, as though it had been submerged for centuries, yet it radiated a strange energy, a power that pulsed in time with the waves. It was unmistakable, this was the entrance to the Abyssal Sanctum. Elara's breath caught in her throat as the boat drew closer. The structure was much larger than she had anticipated, its spires stretching far beneath the water's surface, disappearing into the inky depths below. The air around it hummed with energy, a low, vibrating hum that seemed to resonate with her very bones. As the boat neared the base of the structure, Elara spotted a narrow opening between the stone pillars, a passageway that led down into the darkness. Her heart raced with a mixture of fear and anticipation. This was it. The entrance to the sanctum. But before she could make a move, the water around the boat suddenly churned, bubbling violently. Elara staggered, gripping the boat's edge as the waves grew more aggressive. Something was rising from the depths. With a rush of water, a figure emerged from the sea, a tall, shadowy form that towered over the boat, its body shimmering with an otherworldly glow. Elara's heart pounded in her chest as the figure solidified, revealing a humanoid form with long, flowing hair that seemed to blend into the water itself. Its eyes were pale, glowing like twin moons, and its skin was the color of the deep ocean, dark and gleaming. The creature stood on the surface of the water as though it were solid ground, its gaze fixed on Elara. For a moment, neither of them moved, the air between them thick with tension. Then, the creature spoke, its voice a low, melodic rumble that seemed to resonate with the sea around them. "You have come far, child of the sea," it said, its voice echoing through the mist. "But the path to the Abyssal Sanctum is not open to all." Elara swallowed hard, her heart racing. She could feel the power radiating from the creature, a force as old as the ocean itself. "I'm here to find my mother," she said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. "I need to reach the sanctum." The creature's pale eyes narrowed. "Your blood carries the mark of the sea," it said, its gaze lingering on the pendant around her neck. "But the sanctum is guarded by ancient forces. Only those who prove their worth may enter." Elara took a deep breath, her resolve hardening. She had come too far to turn back now. "What do I need to do?" she asked, her voice firm. The creature regarded her for a long moment, its expression unreadable. Then, with a flick of its hand, the water around the boat began to churn once more. The waves swirled in a circle, creating a vortex that grew larger and larger until the boat was caught in its grip. Elara's heart raced as the boat was pulled into the vortex, the water spinning faster and faster. She gripped the sides of the boat, trying to steady herself as the force of the whirlpool threatened to pull her under. The creature's voice echoed above the roar of the water. "The sea will test you, Elara. If you are truly the daughter of a guardian, you will survive. If not..." It didn't finish the sentence, but the meaning was clear. Without warning, the vortex opened beneath the boat, and Elara was plunged into the depths. The world around her turned to darkness as she was pulled beneath the surface, the water swirling around her in a chaotic dance. She fought to keep her bearings, her lungs burning as the pressure of the deep ocean pressed down on her. The current dragged her deeper and deeper, pulling her into the abyss. Panic surged through her as her vision began to blur, but then, something strange happened. The pendant around her neck began to glow, casting a soft, golden light that cut through the darkness. The warmth from the pendant spread through her body, easing the pressure on her chest and filling her lungs with air. Elara's heart pounded as she realized what was happening. The pendant, her mother's pendant, was protecting her, just as it had been protecting her all along. The light from the pendant grew brighter, illuminating the depths around her, and Elara's panic subsided, replaced by a deep sense of calm. She stopped struggling and allowed the current to carry her. The water around her was no longer threatening, it was welcoming, embracing her as though she were part of it. The deeper she went, the stronger the pull of the pendant became, guiding her towards something ancient and powerful. And then, in the distance, she saw it, a massive gate, carved from the same dark stone as the structure above. The gate was covered in intricate carvings, symbols that seemed to shimmer with a life of their own. It was the entrance to the Abyssal Sanctum. Elara's heart raced as she was drawn toward the gate, the light from her pendant growing ever brighter. She was close now, so close to the answers she had been seeking. But as she approached the gate, a new presence made itself known, a deep, rumbling force that radiated from the gate itself. It was as though the very sea was speaking to her, testing her resolve one final time. "Elara," the voice whispered, echoing through the water. "The path is open. But are you ready for the truth?" Elara's pulse quickened. She didn't know what lay beyond the gate, but she knew she had to face it, whatever it was. She had come too far, endured too much, to turn back now. "I'm ready," she whispered, her voice carried by the water. And with that, the gate began to open, revealing the secrets that lay within. Chapter 6: The Abyssal Sanctum. The ancient stone gates groaned as they parted before Elara, revealing a vast, dark passageway that stretched far beyond her sight. The water around her hummed with a low, resonant energy, as if the sea itself was waiting to see whether she would continue. The light from her pendant, glowing softly against her chest, illuminated only a few feet ahead, casting long shadows on the intricately carved stone walls of the passage. Elara hesitated for a moment, her heart pounding in her chest. The weight of the unknown pressed down on her, and for the first time, the sheer magnitude of her journey became clear. She was about to step into a place that very few had ever seen, a place where the ancient powers of the sea dwelled, where her mother had been taken so many years ago. And yet, despite the fear that gnawed at the edges of her resolve, a deep sense of purpose burned within her. This was what she had been called to do. She had to find the truth, no matter the cost. She took a deep breath, feeling the comforting warmth of the pendant against her skin, and stepped forward into the sanctum. The passageway stretched on, curving gently as it led her deeper into the heart of the structure. The walls were covered in intricate carvings, depictions of sea creatures, swirling currents, and symbols that pulsed faintly with an otherworldly glow. As she walked, Elara couldn't help but feel that the carvings were watching her, observing her every step. The air grew thicker the deeper she went, pressing against her like the weight of the ocean itself. The silence was absolute, broken only by the soft echo of her footsteps on the stone floor and the rhythmic sound of her breath. The water in the passageway was strangely still, its surface smooth as glass, but she could feel the energy within it, a powerful, living force that thrummed beneath the surface. Time seemed to blur as Elara continued her descent. There was no way to tell how long she had been walking, minutes, perhaps hours. But the further she went, the more the sensation of being watched grew, until it became almost unbearable. She could feel eyes on her, though she saw no one. The passage seemed to twist and shift, like the coils of a great serpent, leading her ever downward. And then, at last, the tunnel opened up into a vast, open chamber. Elara stopped at the entrance, her breath catching in her throat as she took in the sight before her. The chamber was enormous, easily the size of a great cathedral, its walls rising high into the dark waters above. Massive pillars, carved from the same dark stone as the gate, supported the ceiling, each one covered in more of the glowing symbols that seemed to pulse with the heartbeat of the sea itself. In the center of the chamber was a pool, a deep, black expanse of water that shimmered faintly in the dim light. The surface of the pool was perfectly still, reflecting the eerie glow of the carvings on the walls. But it wasn't the pool that held Elara's attention. It was the figure standing beside it. Her breath caught in her throat as she saw the woman, tall, elegant, and unmistakably familiar. The woman's long, dark hair flowed like water down her back, and her pale skin shimmered with the same silvery glow as the sea guardian she had met earlier. Her eyes, deep and blue like the darkest part of the ocean, locked onto Elara's with an intensity that sent a shiver down her spine. "Mother," Elara whispered, barely able to believe what she was seeing. The woman's gaze softened, and a small, sad smile appeared on her lips. "Elara," she said, her voice like the soft lapping of waves against the shore. "You've come." Elara's heart pounded in her chest as she stepped closer, her mind racing with questions. After all these years, after all the pain and uncertainty, she was standing face to face with her mother. And yet, something was wrong. The warmth she had hoped for, the joy of reunion, was absent. There was a distance in her mother's eyes, something cold and detached. I came to find you," Elara said, her voice shaking. "I've been searching for so long. Why did you leave? What happened?" Her mother's smile faded, and for a moment, she looked away, her gaze fixed on the still surface of the pool. "It wasn't my choice, Elara," she said softly. "The sea called me back. I was bound to it, just as you are." Elara shook her head, confusion clouding her thoughts. "But you left. You had a life with us, with Father and me. Why didn't you come back? Why didn't you tell me the truth?" Her mother's expression remained calm, though there was a flicker of pain in her eyes. "I didn't want to leave you," she said. "But the ocean has its own will. I was chosen to protect something ancient, something powerful. The Abyssal Sanctum is more than just a place, it is the heart of the sea's power. And those of us who are bound to it cannot leave. Elara's chest tightened. But why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you let me know what happened? I spent years wondering if you were alive, if you had abandoned us. Tears welled in her eyes, but her mother remained composed, her voice steady and calm. I was not allowed to tell you, Elara. There are rules in this world, rules that even guardians must obey. The sea demanded my silence. But now you are here, and the truth can finally be revealed. Elara's hands trembled as she took another step forward, her mind spinning. The truth. That was what she had come for, but now that she was standing on the edge of it, it felt heavier than she had ever imagined. What truth? Her mother sighed, her eyes softening with something like regret. The Sanctum has chosen you, just as it chose me. The power of the ocean runs through your veins, and you cannot escape it. You were always destined to follow this path. Elara's heart pounded in her chest. What do you mean? Destined for what? Her mother stepped closer, her eyes filled with an ancient knowledge. The Sanctum's power must be guarded, protected from those who would seek to control it. I was its guardian for many years, but my time is ending. You are the next in line, Elara. You are to take my place. The words hit her like a wave, crashing into her with a force that left her breathless. Elara stared at her mother, unable to comprehend what she was hearing. I can't. I don't belong here. I don't know anything about the Sanctum or the power of the sea. Her mother's expression remained calm, though there was a flicker of sympathy in her eyes. You are stronger than you know, Elara. The sea has been watching you, guiding you to this moment. It chose you because it knows you are worthy. Elara's mind reeled. All her life, she had felt the pull of the ocean, the strange connection that seemed to run deeper than mere fascination. But to become the guardian of the Sanctum, to spend her life bound to the sea, as her mother had been, it was too much to take in. I don't understand, Elara whispered, her voice trembling. Why me? Why can't you stay? Her mother looked at her with a sadness that seemed to stretch back through the years. My time has come to an end, Elara. The sea is calling me back to its depths. But you still have a life ahead of you. You can choose your path, but know that the Sanctum will always be a part of you, whether you accept it or not. Elara's chest tightened. The weight of her mother's words pressed down on her, threatening to overwhelm her. And if I refuse? Her mother's gaze darkened slightly, though there was no anger in her voice. The Sanctum will seek another. But its power must be guarded, and those who turn away from their destiny often find the sea to be a cruel mistress. Elara swallowed hard. She had come so far, faced so much, but this was more than she had ever imagined. The ocean was offering her a life of power, of connection to something ancient and eternal, but it came at a cost. The cost of her freedom. The cost of her life on land. The cost of everything she had known. Her mother stepped closer, reaching out to gently touch Elara's cheek. "I love you, my daughter," she said softly. "Whatever you choose, I will always love you." Elara closed her eyes, tears spilling down her cheeks. The warmth of her mother's touch, the weight of her words, the pull of the sea, all of it swirled inside her, a tempest of emotion and uncertainty. When she opened her eyes, her mother was already fading, her form dissolving into the mist that hovered over the pool. "The choice is yours, Elara," her voice echoed softly as she disappeared. "But choose wisely." And then, she was gone, leaving Elara alone in the heart of the Abyssal Sanctum. Chapter 7: The Trial of the Abyss. Elara stood motionless, her mother's words still echoing in the vast, silent chamber. The emptiness left in the wake of her mother's departure felt crushing, as though the weight of the ocean itself had settled on her shoulders. The air around her was thick with the scent of salt and ancient power, and the soft glow of the pendant at her neck pulsed in time with her racing heart. She had wanted answers for so long, but now that they had been laid before her, they brought only more questions, and a choice that terrified her. The Abyssal Sanctum loomed around her, its dark, towering pillars and intricate carvings seeming to watch her, waiting for her decision. She had come this far, navigated the mysteries of the sea, and found her mother. But this, becoming the Sanctum's guardian, was not the future she had ever envisioned for herself. The idea of being bound to this place, to the sea's ancient power, for the rest of her life filled her with dread. But the alternative, walking away, abandoning the power and legacy she had unknowingly inherited, felt just as impossible. What would happen if she refused? Could she even live a normal life knowing what she now knew? Her mother's warning about the sea being a cruel mistress lingered in her mind. Would the ocean let her go, or would it pursue her, pulling her back into its depths? Elara's thoughts raced, her eyes drawn to the still pool in the center of the chamber. It shimmered faintly, as though the water held more than mere reflections. She approached it slowly, the soft sloshing of her footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. As she neared the edge, the pool rippled, and Elara gasped as a vision began to form in the water's surface. The water was showing her something, a future, perhaps. She saw herself, standing on a distant shore, her hair blowing in the wind as she gazed out at the sea. The vision shifted, and now she was aboard a ship, its sails billowing as it cut through the waves. She was older, wiser, but there was a sadness in her eyes, a deep longing that seemed to weigh her down. The sea had called her back, over and over again, and no matter how far she sailed, she could never escape it. The vision changed once more. This time, she saw herself standing in the very chamber she now occupied, but her mother was gone, and she was alone and bound to the sanctum, her life now intertwined with the ancient power that pulsed beneath the waves. The weight of it all pressed down on her, an endless duty that stretched into eternity. Elara recoiled from the vision, her heart pounding in her chest. Both futures felt suffocating, as though no matter what she chose, she would be trapped either by the sea's pull or by the sanctum's power. Was there no escape? No path that didn't lead to isolation or burden? She knelt by the pool, her fingers brushing the water's surface, sending ripples through the vision. "What do I do?" she whispered, her voice trembling. The water shimmered again, but this time, no vision appeared. Instead, the water seemed to darken, deepening into an inky blackness that made her stomach churn with unease. The air in the chamber shifted, growing colder, and Elara felt the hairs on the back of her neck rise. Something was coming. Suddenly, a deep rumble echoed through the sanctum, the very walls vibrating with a force that seemed to come from the depths of the ocean itself. Elara stumbled backward, her heart racing as the pool in front of her began to churn violently, waves rising up and crashing against the stone edges. From the swirling water, a shape began to emerge, large and dark, its form twisting and undulating as it rose from the depths. Elara's breath caught in her throat as the creature took shape, towering over her with gleaming, obsidian scales and eyes that glowed with a pale, otherworldly light. It was a sea serpent, its long, sinuous body coiling around the chamber like a massive serpent of the deep. The serpent's eyes locked onto Elara, and she felt its ancient gaze pierce through her, as though it were weighing her very soul. The air in the sanctum crackled with tension, and Elara instinctively took a step back, her heart pounding in her chest. "Child of the sea," the serpent's voice rumbled, deep and resonant, vibrating through the very air. "You stand at the threshold of the Abyssal Sanctum. You seek answers, but first, you must face the trial." Elara's throat tightened. "The trial?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. The serpent's massive head dipped lower, its glowing eyes narrowing as it regarded her. "The power of the sanctum is not given freely. Only those who prove their worth may wield it. You must face the depths of the abyss, the darkness that dwells within the ocean's heart." Elara's pulse quickened. The abyss? The very word sent a chill down her spine. She had heard stories of the abyss, a place of unfathomable depths, where light could not reach and where the ocean's most ancient and dangerous creatures resided. It was a place of legend, spoken of in hushed whispers by sailors who had sailed too far from shore and returned with haunted eyes. The serpent's voice echoed in the chamber once more. To become the Sanctum's guardian, you must confront the abyss and survive its trial. Only then will the power of the sea be yours to command. Elara's stomach twisted with fear. The abyss. The very thought of descending into its dark depths filled her with dread. But there was no turning back now. She had come too far to walk away from the path laid before her. If this was what it took to find the truth, to understand her mother's fate, then she would face it, no matter how terrifying the trial might be. She straightened, summoning every ounce of courage she had. "I'll do it," she said, her voice steady despite the fear coiling in her chest. "I'll face the abyss." The serpent's eyes gleamed, and it let out a low, rumbling growl of approval. "Very well, child of the sea. The trial begins now." Without warning, the water beneath Elara's feet surged upward, wrapping around her like a powerful current. She gasped as the cold water pulled her under, dragging her down into the depths of the pool. The light from her pendant flickered wildly as she was plunged into darkness, the weight of the ocean pressing down on her as she descended further and further into the abyssal depths. The pressure grew more intense, squeezing the air from her lungs, but the pendant's light flared, filling her chest with warmth and allowing her to breathe even in the crushing depths. The water around her was cold, colder than she had ever felt, and it seemed to pulse with a life of its own, drawing her deeper and deeper into the darkness. Then, without warning, the descent stopped, and Elara found herself suspended in the inky blackness of the abyss. There was no light, no sound, only the eerie stillness of the ocean's depths. Her heart pounded in her chest, and she strained to see something, anything, in the endless void around her. And then she felt it, movement in the darkness. A low, guttural growl echoed through the water, and Elara's pulse quickened as she sensed something massive circling her. Her body tensed, her senses on high alert as the creature in the darkness drew closer, its presence sending ripples through the water. She couldn't see it, but she could feel it, something ancient, something powerful, and it was watching her. The growl deepened, vibrating through the water, and then, without warning, the creature lunged. Elara barely had time to react before it was upon her, a massive shadow that moved faster than anything she had ever seen. She twisted in the water, the pendant's light flaring as she dodged the creature's attack, but it was relentless, its jaws snapping just inches from her body. She swam desperately, her limbs burning with exertion as she tried to outmaneuver the creature. The darkness made it impossible to see, and every time she thought she had gained some distance, the creature would strike again, its powerful body cutting through the water like a blade. Her lungs burned, her muscles screamed in protest, but she couldn't stop. The creature's presence was overwhelming, a force of nature that seemed to embody the very essence of the abyss itself. This was the trial, this was the darkness she had to face. But as the creature closed in for another attack, something inside Elara shifted. A deep, primal instinct stirred within her, and suddenly, the fear that had been consuming her melted away, replaced by a calm, steady resolve. She wasn't just a helpless swimmer lost in the abyss, she was part of the ocean. The sea ran through her veins, just as it had her mother's. And she would not be defeated by the darkness. As the creature lunged once more, Elara's hands shot out, gripping the pendant around her neck. The light flared brighter than ever before, illuminating the abyss in a brilliant burst of gold. The creature recoiled, its massive form revealed for the first time, an enormous, serpentine beast with eyes that glowed with the light of the deep ocean. The creature hesitated, its movements slower now, as though it had been momentarily stunned by the light. Elara took the opportunity to gather her strength, her mind clear and focused. She could feel the ocean's power flowing through her, the same power that her mother had wielded as a guardian. This was her test, not just of survival, but of her connection to the sea. The creature lunged again, but this time, Elara didn't run. Instead, she raised her hand, calling upon the power of the sanctum that pulsed within her. The pendant's light flared once more, and the water around her surged in response, creating a barrier between her and the creature. The serpent collided with the barrier, recoiling with a furious growl as the light and water forced it back. Elara's chest heaved with exertion, but she stood her ground, her hand still raised as she channeled the ocean's energy. She wasn't afraid anymore. She wasn't alone. The sea was with her, protecting her, guiding her. She could feel its strength coursing through her, and she knew, in that moment, that she was ready. The creature circled her once more, but it didn't attack. Instead, it paused, its glowing eyes fixed on her with something like respect. And then, with a final flick of its massive tail, it disappeared into the darkness, leaving Elara alone in the still waters of the abyss. Her heart raced, her body trembling with exhaustion, but she had done it. She had faced the trial, and she had survived. The light from her pendant dimmed, and the water around her began to calm, settling into a gentle rhythm. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the trial was over. The water surged upward, carrying her back to the surface, back to the sanctum. Chapter 8: The Keeper of the Abyss. Elara surfaced from the depths, gasping for breath as the water around her shimmered with the soft light of dawn. The trial of the abyss had left her body aching and her mind reeling, but she had survived. As she drifted to the edge of the pool in the sanctum's vast chamber, the waters stilled, cradling her with a gentleness that belied the intense test she had just endured. The pendant around her neck had dimmed, its glow now soft and steady, but it still pulsed faintly with the ancient power of the ocean, a reminder of the immense force that had surged through her during the trial. She glanced around the chamber, half expecting to see the sea serpent reappear or her mother's ethereal form materialize from the mist, but the sanctum was silent. It felt different now, almost peaceful, as though the storm that had been building inside these walls for so long had finally passed. Slowly, Elara pulled herself out of the water, her limbs heavy with exhaustion but her heart light. She had done it, faced the abyss and emerged whole. The ancient power of the sanctum had recognized her, accepted her. But what did that mean for her future? What would happen now that she had proven her worth? As she sat on the edge of the pool, catching her breath, a soft ripple broke the surface of the water. Elara's eyes widened as the familiar figure of her mother appeared once again, standing on the far side of the pool. But this time, her mother looked different. Her form was less shadowy, more solid, as though the completion of Elara's trial had lifted a veil between them. "Mother," Elara whispered, her voice filled with a mixture of relief and confusion. Her mother smiled, a gentle, radiant expression that softened the lines of her face. "You have done well, Elara," she said, her voice filled with pride. "The sanctum has tested you, and you have proven yourself worthy." Elara stood slowly, her muscles trembling with the effort. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside her. "Am I bound to this place? Am I supposed to become the guardian, like you?" Her mother's expression remained calm, though there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. "The power of the sanctum has always needed a keeper, someone to protect its secrets and guard its depths. For many years, that was my duty. But you are different, Elara. The sea does not claim you as it did me." Elara frowned, her brow furrowing in confusion. "What do you mean?" "I thought the trial meant I had to stay, that I would take your place." Her mother shook her head gently. "The trial was not a test to see if you would be bound to the sanctum, but to see if you were worthy of the choice. You are free, Elara. Free to choose your own path." Elara's heart skipped a beat. The weight she had felt pressing down on her since entering the sanctum suddenly lifted, replaced by a lightness she hadn't dared hope for. "I can leave?" she asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. "I don't have to stay here forever." Her mother smiled softly. "The sea's power will always be a part of you, Elara. But it does not control you. You are not bound to this place as I was. You are free to return to the life you left behind, to the world above. But know this, the ocean will always call to you. Its mysteries will always be yours to protect, even from afar." Elara stood in stunned silence, the enormity of her mother's words sinking in. All her life, she had felt the pull of the sea, the weight of its mysteries tugging at her soul. And now, she was being told she could walk away, return to her life on land, untethered by the ancient power that had once bound her mother. But deep down, she knew it wasn't that simple. She could never truly turn her back on the sea. It had been a part of her for as long as she could remember, woven into the very fabric of who she was. But she didn't have to be a prisoner to it, as her mother had been. "What about you?" Elara asked, her voice tinged with sorrow. "What happens to you now?" Her mother's gaze softened, a flicker of peace passing over her features. "My duty here is fulfilled. The sanctum no longer needs me, and neither do you. I am free as well, free to return to the sea's depths, to rest. My journey is complete." Elara felt a lump rise in her throat, the thought of losing her mother again almost unbearable. She had just found her, just learned the truth about her, and now she was saying goodbye. "I don't want to lose you again," Elara whispered, tears welling in her eyes. Her mother crossed the distance between them, her steps light and graceful, and gently cupped Elara's face in her hands. "You will never lose me, my daughter," she said softly. "I will always be with you, in the waves, in the wind, in the heart of the sea. The bond we share is eternal. No distance, no time, can break it." Elara closed her eyes, letting the warmth of her mother's touch wash over her. She wanted to hold on to this moment, to make it last forever. But she knew that wasn't possible. Just as the tides came and went, so too did moments in life. She had to let go, to allow her mother the peace she had earned. When she opened her eyes again, her mother was smiling, a serene, almost ethereal glow surrounding her. "You are stronger than you know, Elara," she said. "And now, you can live your life with the knowledge that the ocean's power is within you. Use it wisely, and you will find your way." Elara nodded, her throat tight with emotion. "I will," she promised. "I'll carry the sea with me, always." Her mother's smile widened, and for a moment, they simply stood there, holding each other's gaze, the silence between them filled with unspoken love and understanding. Then, with a final gentle squeeze of Elara's hands, her mother stepped back. "Goodbye, Elara," she whispered. "May the sea guide you, always." Elara watched, tears slipping down her cheeks, as her mother's form began to dissolve into the mist, her figure fading like the last traces of a dream. The glowing light around her softened, and then, she was gone, leaving only the faintest ripple in the air where she had stood. Elara stood alone in the sanctum, her heart aching with both grief and peace. Her mother was gone, but her presence lingered, a part of the sea that would never leave her. And as Elara looked around the vast chamber, she felt the weight of her own choices settle within her. The ocean was vast, mysterious, and powerful, but it did not control her. She had faced its trials, embraced its power, and now she was free, free to live her life, guided by the knowledge and strength she had gained. With a deep breath, Elara turned and made her way back to the edge of the pool. The boat that had carried her into the sanctum waited patiently, bobbing gently on the water's surface. She climbed aboard, her limbs still heavy but her spirit light. The water rippled as the boat moved, gliding smoothly through the passageway that led back to the surface. As she sailed away from the sanctum, the towering pillars and ancient carvings faded into the distance, swallowed by the mist and the depths. The light of the open ocean beckoned her, and with every moment, the weight of the past seemed to lift. Finally, the boat broke through the surface, and Elara emerged into the golden light of the setting sun. The horizon stretched out before her, endless and filled with possibility. The air was warm, the breeze gentle, and the sound of the waves lapping against the boat was like a soft lullaby, reminding her of the ocean's eternal rhythm. Elara smiled to herself, her heart swelling with both sadness and hope. She had come so far, faced so much, and now she was ready to move forward. The sea would always be a part of her, but it was not her prison, it was her guide, her companion, and her home. With a final glance back at the distant horizon, where the sanctum lay hidden beneath the waves, Elara set her sights on the shore ahead. The journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, she felt truly free. And as the boat carried her toward the shore, the last rays of the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden path over the water, leading her home.